If there's one thing you can say for the Souls series, it definitely has some memorable areas, but not always for the right reasons. When you build a game franchise with this level of challenge, I think there's always going to be some successes and some failures. Today, I want to talk about the best and worst area in each Souls game, including Sekiro and Elden Ring, kind of a sequel to the video ranking the games by world design and areas from a couple weeks ago. Now, you might be wondering why I'm doing it in this format as opposed to my usual tried and tested top 12 list. Well, I had been thinking about doing a top 12 worst areas video, but I kind of felt like the boss runback and worst bosses ranking videos were dominated by Dark Souls 2 entries, and regardless of your opinions of that game, I think you can't really deny that the same thing would happen again here with this topic. Plus, this gives me a chance to talk about every game in the franchise, which I like doing. Of course, I'd love to hear your opinions also, so please let me know in the comments below which were your favourite and least favourite areas in these games, and smash that subscribe button for more content and to support the channel if you haven't already done so. So, without further ado. Demon Souls. Well, if you watch my Demon Souls review, you surely know my favourite area is 3-1 Tower of Latria. This is one of the series' best attempts at doing horror in my opinion, and the atmosphere here is phenomenal. The lightning flashes, the screams, the mind flayers, and the level of puzzle and challenge is just spot on. Plus, Fool's Idol at the end is one of the better Demon Souls bosses. I'm a big horror fan, so this level really spoke to me, and I felt tense the whole way through. The visuals in the remake really helped bring this area to life. As for worst area in the game, I was tempted to give it to 1-4 or 4-2 for the horrendous boss runbacks, but I think if we're looking at an area as a whole, it's got to be the 5-2 Poison Swamp. The amount the swamp slows you down is worse than any other entry in the Souls series, and getting beaten to death by enemies while trying to maneuver through thick gravy is actually not my idea of fun. Surprising, I know. Poison swamps in these games are never a good time, and I genuinely think this might be the worst of them. At the very least, the boss is easy and there's a shortcut once you get near the end, but even getting to that point I'd say is pretty horrific. Dark Souls 1 is up next. Honestly, kind of a tough one, but on balance I think it's got to be Anor Londo. The level design here is top notch. There's definitely some very tough parts like the rafter section and the notorious archer bit, but everything connects really well. There's some appropriate shortcuts around the map, and I love how the aesthetic differs so much from all the dark grotty areas you've experienced in the game up to this point. After weeks of slumming it in Blighttown, you finally made it to high society. Plus, this area is host to Ornstein and Smough, one of the best bosses in the series and a fantastic skill check for the player. I also love the secrets dotted around, like the illusory wall with Havel's gear behind it, or having Gwendolyn there as a secret boss. Plus, that intro cutscene to this area, pretty spectacular. As for worst area in the game, for me it's hands down Tomb of the Giants. The reduced visibility makes this a nightmare to traverse. Your only options for light are the Skull Lantern, meaning you have to use up your left hand, or the Sunlight Maggot, something not easy to get without knowing a very specific series of steps. Chances are you won't have the latter unless you looked up how to find it. The darkness and narrow pathways mean you'll fall off a lot, and the giant skeletons on all fours are super aggressive. It's capped off by Gravelord Nito and, well, go watch my worst bosses video if you want to hear me discuss in more detail, but I think he sucks. In summary, visibility impairment combined with narrow ledges, large aggressive enemies, and a rubbish boss makes for a bad time. Who knew? Dark Souls 2. Well, for best area, this was actually really tricky to pin down. With most of the others, I knew instantly what I wanted to talk about, while here, I had to look at a list of every area and go through one by one. In the end, I've settled on Ilium Lois. I think overall the level design here is pretty good, there's a lot of unique enemies and some good shortcuts throughout. I like the mechanic of melting all the ice, so now you can re-explore the level to go to areas you couldn't access before, and also locating the Lois Knights is a fun mini-quest. Plus, the atmosphere is pretty great. Ivory King is a great fight, even if I don't like doing the knight section every time you want to fight him. There's still some stuff that I'm not keen on with this area, but it's more Dark Souls 2 issues than the area specifically, stuff like enemy ganks or bad boss hitboxes. But, funnily enough, my least favourite area is connected to this one. I mean, look, you knew it was going to be this, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it. Frigid Outskirts sucks, it's awful, we all hate it, we all know it. Done. Sorted. But, I'll also give a dishonourable mention to Iron Keep as well, for its horrendous enemy placement and near prerequisite of clearing out all of them. There's a lot of bad areas in this game, so you could easily shove stuff like Shrine of Amana, Iron Passage, Black Gulch, or any of that other crap in here. Okay, I'm done talking about bad Dark Souls 2 areas for a while now. Bloodborne. For Bloodborne, it's a toss-up between two DLC areas, the Research Hall and the Fishing Hamlet. I honestly couldn't choose between them, so it's a tie. The research hall has these horribly deformed patients as enemies, and you can tell some bad things have gone down here. Living Fairies is probably the weakest DLC boss, but it's instantly followed by Lady Maria with absolutely no runback whatsoever. Very happy about this. Fishing Hamlet is an equally evil place full of deformed fishmen and particularly aggressive shark giants. Although Orphan of Kos isn't my favourite boss, the opening cutscene introducing him is pretty memorable and he definitely fits well within this area. The grim ambience filling the air really hammers in the atrocities that have been committed. As for worst area, while I could have chosen the obligatory Poison Swamp area Nightmare Frontier, I'm going to go with Forbidden Woods. This area is so easy to get lost in and full of those annoying snake blobs. I still get confused trying to navigate this area now, and it's always the point of any Bloodborne run that I dread doing. The Shadows of Yharnam is a much less tedious version of the Gank Squad, but it's still not really very fun to fight and has a pretty long boss run back to boot. Overall, I'd rather avoid this area if I can. Dark Souls 3. There's some good choices here. Archdragon Peak and Lothric Castle are fantastic areas, but I think I have to give it to the Ring City for being the final area in a Souls game ever and capping off everything pretty perfectly. The views in this area are incredible, and we get two amazing bosses in Midir and Gale. Okay, Half-Light kinda sucks, but at least we get to see Patches again in one of his greatest roles yet. Huge fan of this DLC, as you can probably tell. Worst area is an interesting one because I'd probably have to go with Irithyll Dungeon, which is an homage to Tower of Latria from Demon Souls, but certainly not a good one. As a first point, this is a pretty lazy design choice. These jailers being able to drain your max health to next to nothing and then quickly jab you with their pokers for the kill feels incredibly cheap. There's not even some kind of cool boss at the end to make up for it, you just move on to Profane Capital. It feels like a chore every time I have to traverse it, and the only reward for making it through is another unmemorable area. Definitely my least favourite in Dark Souls 3. Sekiro. Sekiro has some really great areas for the most part. I think I have to give the nod to Fountainhead Palace though. This area looks great. I love the giant carp and the enemies draining your life force and making you age rapidly. It's a really unique take on the Mind Flayers or Octopus Men from the previous games. It's a great area to take advantage of Sekiro's stealth and farm up some XP. Again, atmosphere is fantastic and so are the visuals. The view when you first enter the area really sets the tone. As for the worst, there aren't many outright bad areas, but I have to go with this poison area with the Snake Eyes guy. A bunch of guys shooting at you and you can't touch the ground. It's very exposed, so it's hard to do any stealth kills, and you can't really get up close with them due to the poison and the long range of all the other enemies around. Once you get through, you get rewarded with that double 8 fight. Great, awesome, love it. Let's move on. Elden Ring. Last but not least, let's talk Elden Ring. Unquestionably, it's the Leyndell capital for me. This is one of the best areas ever designed in my opinion. It's chock full of secrets, enemies, items, and is the final roadblock before the endgame section. This area looks awesome with its bright white colours and this enormous dead dragon nestled in there. In short, I love it. It's also home to some great bosses in Morgott and Godfrey. Also, I love these pipe-playing rolling enemies, they crack me up. I thought hard about putting Caelid here as well, but it's more of a region than an area, so I don't think you can count it in the same way. Elden Ring does make this a little harder to define, to be fair. As for the worst area in Elden Ring, I think it's got to be the Consecrated Snowfield. Firstly, when you enter the area, they tried to do the Frigid Outskirts Blizzard thing. Again, seriously? Of all the things you want to bring back from previous games, this is what you choose? It's a pretty uninteresting area on the whole. As I said in the other video, I'm just not a fan of snow areas. They always just look so bland. I'm not factoring in the mini dungeons of this area to my opinion, although I'm still kind of salty about that repeat Astel nonsense. But that Evergale with the invisible Black Knife assassins and the archers is one of the worst things in the game, and I hate it. Screw this area, please no more snowy levels. Well, that was my list, but what about you? What are your favourite and least favourite areas in each of these games? Let me know in the comments below, and of course like it and smash that subscribe button for more content and support the channel. Maybe check out one of my other videos as well if you haven't done already. I've got a video here on the screen for best bosses and a video here on the screen for worst bosses. Anyway, have a good one and see you guys soon.